Hello, folks. Welcome to another edition of In the Box. This is Coach Q, and that's Reverend Bell, and the boy still in Texas. It's all good. Hey, we might be coming down there soon. Who knows? We may hit you up. We may hit you up. Indianapolis to Texas. But we were actually just in the middle of a discussion. I was like, hey, why don't we record this? Because people may want to be a part of this as well and see how crazy we are and how crazy our thoughts are. So we're actually in the book of Daniel, and we're discussing how Nebuchadnezzar came to recollection of God. And it all came about because of a question is, why do we blame God? Right? I think that's the question that we were just talking about. Why do we blame God? We go through seasons of ups and downs, and we blame God for actions. And when we sin, I mean, what does the song say? We rise and we fall, we make up, we break up. It's a revolving cycle with us.
We
But
blame God for our lifestyles.
yeah, blaming God for our lives. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. So we were in the book of Daniel, and we were trying to explore or looking at why or what brought Nebuchadnezzar to God. That's kind of where we're going at, right?
Hmm.
All right. So where were we picking up at? We're in Nebuchadnezzar or Daniel, and you had us in chapter two.
To chapter 2,
Okay.
and we're talking about how we were reading chapter 2, and we started at verse 3, and then we were reading down to where the Hebrew boys. Let's just start from the beginning. That why did the Hebrew boys get captive? Why did they become captive? Right. And so then we were in a scope of where you said he was presenting himself as God, and for 7 years, and
Wait,
then
hold on. Let's go back to the question. Why did the Hebrew boys get captive?
well, because of the leaders in their what the kings that did before them, it wasn't even their fault that they got captive, but because of their leaders that did with their disobedience and the past had caught up to them. The leaders had got them in trouble, right? And so,
So if we go to the book of Jeremiah,
mm-hmm,
see in Jeremiah 25, Jeremiah has a prophecy about the children of Israel being captive in their own land.
mm-hmm,
And Jeremiah prophesies that Nebuchadnezzar is going to come in, a Babylonian king who's going to come in and rule over the Israelites. So the Babylonians going to take over Israel. So the first time in their history that they've been in their own land, they're going to have a Gentile king overruling them in their own land for the first time ever. And that starts off what we call the age of the Gentiles. So that's what happens because of the disobedience of the Israelites,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay. All right. So now we get to King Nebuchadnezzar. He's actually here now in the book of Daniel. And you said something about the Hebrew boys?
yeah. Well, I said that they were casualties of war. They were
Okay.
casualties of what happened. You think about it. Why did it happen to them? They were probably just minding their own business. And so, but for me, what I see is they were put here because, like they say, they were used by God to tell him his dreams because nobody else could do it for Nebuchadnezzar, right? And so then, like you said, he was presenting himself as God. And so then, for me, God used Nebuchadnezzar for, like you said in Jeremiah, and then now God is turning around and using the Hebrew boys to get to Nebuchadnezzar to show him. And like I said, why do bad things happen to good people?
Well, see, I
Sometimes,
don't think that it's the Hebrew boys, and that's the part that
but if you read the scripture, it turns that where nobody else could do it, right? So then he couldn't, because if he was God, why come he couldn't interpret his own dreams? His own sorcerers couldn't do it. So
I agree with you on that part.
now you have these boys who got these special gifts. Well, Daniel has a special gift, right? And he comes on the scene and says, "Okay, Nebby," I call him Nebby, and so he's showing these dreams to him. He's telling him and he's revealing it to him. So then they get these props. Daniel and them, they get this they get these props that were, oh, okay, you do have some connection with God. I'm not God, is that what Nebuchadnezzar said? I'm not God, so I see that God reveals things to you, right? So it's not always bad that things happen to us when it looks bad, because some good can come out of what we're going through in that season of that wilderness, right? It, even though I didn't do nothing, or so to speak, I didn't do nothing, but there's still going to be a time where somebody might need to see that light. Somebody need to hear God because they think they got it all together, or they might not have it all together. But we are, as beacons of light, we are to instill something in them, right? Even if we got I love Paul when he has his own stuff, but he still has enough compassion and love to write these love letters to us, to show the church, and then that we see it like, man, how could this guy write all this and he's in this much trouble? But it was for the glory of God. So then go ahead.
But if you don't mind me interjecting,
No, go ahead.
you're saying that the purpose of the Hebrew boys in their time of trouble was to draw Nebuchadnezzar to understand that he was not God, if I'm understanding you
I,
correctly.
I can say that, yes, sir.
Okay. All right. But do you think that it like that was the example, or they were the example that made Nebuchadnezzar understand that he was truly not God?
I think it played a big part of it.
Hmm. So, okay.
Because like again, I say, if he was truly God, he didn't need nobody to interpret his dreams.
Okay. So I'm not going to argue about that, but let's go to Daniel 4:28.
Uh-huh.
So this is the part to where I think that is what made Nebuchadnezzar understand that he was not God.
Let's read it.
It says, all this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar. And verse 29 says, at the end of 12 months, he was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon. So here is a year later from anything that's previously happened, right? And verse 30 says, and the king answered and said, is not this great Babylon, which I have built by my mighty power as a royal residence and for the glory of my majesty? So he's declaring himself to be creator, and all this is done by his own hand. Verse 31. While the words were still in the king's mouth, and I got to flip the page and the new Bible. Pages are sticky, of course.
Yeah, you.
There fell a voice from heaven, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken, the kingdom has departed from you, and you shall be driven from among men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and you shall be made to eat grass like oxen. And 7 periods of time shall pass over you until you know that the Most High rules the kingdom of men and gives it to whom he will. Verse 33 says, immediately the word was fulfilled against Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven from among men and ate grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven till his hair grew as long as eagle's feathers, and his nails were like birds' claws. And then it goes on to say that after the 7 years, that's when he came to his knowledge and senses and knowing that uh, God is God. So that to me was the point that made Nebuchadnezzar understand who he was, and it was nothing of him and or what he was doing.
I believe it's the softening of 3 to 4, that he now begins to, his spirit now begins, that hardness begins to, because if you have a hard spirit, it's hard to hear God, because you got all these things going on around you. So as Daniel is presenting uh, himself to Nebuchadnezzar, in a sense, like he's telling him, Nebuchadnezzar's heart is starting to soften to me, and his mind is like, he got him thinking now, like, whoa, because he says right here in 4:18, this dream King Nebuchadnezzar saw, and you, O Belshazzar, tell me the interpretation, because all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known to me the interpretations, but you are able, for the spirit of the holy gods is in you. So he starts now to see the work of God in Nebuchadnezzar. I mean, not in Nebuchadnezzar, I'm sorry, but in Daniel, right? And so then for me, I see that, man, this dude is his heart is getting softened, because it's almost like Pharaoh. His heart kept getting hard that he couldn't see God moving through Moses and Aaron. So then it's like, wait a minute. So then after he kept on getting with all this, so now Nebuchadnezzar, for me, as Daniel continues to show him things, Nebuchadnezzar is starting to like, okay,
So then why did he have to go through 7 years of insanity?
hey, it's just the same way that I think anytime the presence of God is making you uncomfortable, some things gonna go on until God gets your full attention. It may be a time that you're gonna feel like you're going crazy. If I felt like the Spirit of the Lord left me, I probably would go crazy. Or before I even got to God, I was in a wild, crazy mode. I was selling drugs. I was doing all this, I knew God, but I didn't know God, right? And so then, as God began to show me Him, and on my Damascus road, that's when my heart began to really hear and see God moving in my life. Because before, I thought it was all about me. I thought it was all about Paul Bell. That's just my part of that 7 year thing. It could go either way. Maybe God was trying to get his attention this way, or God told him this was going to happen. Sometimes you got to be broken down to be rebuilt.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that the instances with Nebuchadnezzar in his dreams, the instances with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were all steps to get Nebuchadnezzar to understand who God is.
I will say that's correct if you want to narrow it down. It's a part
Okay.
of it.
All right. So, but
What are your thoughts?
I can see where you're coming from. I can see them as being steps to having a part in Nebuchadnezzar understanding who God is, but for me to say that the instance that made him understand was when he was insane. Because what we even see is that at the end of Daniel chapter 4 is
Mm-hmm.
Nebuchadnezzar himself is speaking, and it's his testimony as to how he came to know who God was. And it was after those 7 years that he understood. He doesn't seem to mention what happened to or with the Hebrew boys.
Well, it's like the Bible's not going to give us every scope. It gives us.
Well, I understand, but I think if this is part of his testimony, he would say, you know what, listen, Daniel's, or he would somehow give credit to them for him having a recollection. But when I'm reading the last part of it, it doesn't say now, like you said, all those may have had steps in it, but the step, the straw that broke the camel's back per se, was the fact that he went crazy. And then after him going crazy, that's when he recognized, like, dude, like even he says at the end of verse 35 in chapter 4, none can stay his hand or say to him, what have you done?
Mhm.
And before that, he says, all the inhabitants of the earth are counted as nothing, and he does according to his will among the hosts of heaven and amongst the inhabitants of the earth. And then he says, and none can stay his hand or say to him, what have you done? At the same time, my reason returned to me, and for the glory of my kingdom, my majesty and my splendor returned to me. My counselors and my lords sought me. I was established in my kingdom, and still more greatness was added to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, for all his works are right and his ways are just. And those who walk in pride, he is able to humble. So he had pride, even though he was listening to Daniel, he didn't care. Even though he saw Shadrach, Meshach, and he's like, okay, great. Now there's times when he had those glimpses, and I think it goes back into kind of what we just discussed earlier, excuse me, about the seasons that we go through, the good and the bad, and giving God the glory where he's supposed to get glory, and heck, sometimes taking away from him. Let's be honest, right? I don't think that we give him all the due recognition that he's earned or should be garnered.
So let me ask you this: do you think that King Nebuchadnezzar, would have had these if the Hebrew boys had not came on the scene and been captive? I think that God has a plan. He has something already set in place for each and every one of us. So in this time that he knew Nebuchadnezzar was trying to be or portraying himself as God, and there shall be no other God, that he had to humble him. And I think that, and for me reading, I think the only way that he was going to get humble was for them to be in that captive state.
Well, if we go back to the prophecy of
Mm-hmm.
Jeremiah 25, he says in chapter 25, God is saying or through Jeremiah that Nebuchadnezzar is his vessel,
Yeah,
is
yeah,
one of his people.
yeah.
So
Because
to say that those things were necessary, we that's this and that nor another. To be honest, I mean, if all those things had an impact on Nebuchadnezzar, I should say not if, because I think that they possibly did, and I think that they had a I what we're seeing in the life of Nebuchadnezzar is like we talked about earlier. We do good, we see good, we think we receive good. And he continue has lapses to where he just disregards, kind of like what you said with Pharaoh. Things happen, he acknowledges it at that point in time, and then he dismisses it. Why would he, if he truly was having a Damascus Road experience per se,
Mm-hmm.
right? If he was truly having a Damascus Road experiences with the Hebrew boys, why would he go out to the top of his palace and think that he built everything on his own?
So, so this is what I want to say, and it's going to probably circle back to that. One of the things that I love about the Word of God is that even though he felt like God uses who he will use. So, like you said, it prophesies that. So, even though I like to think that even though Nebuchadnezzar could never get a hold to them, God said, you know what, since y'all disobedient, I'm going to let Nebuchadnezzar get you. So he used him. He was God's vessel because God will use who he chooses to use, right? So then at this point, like you say, he's on top of his roof. Um, I would think that, hey, he's ready to see it all come down. He's ready to see it go away because now God is about to
Why
put.
would he even risk that if God had such an impact on his life beforehand?
Because sometimes that's what we do. We sometimes when we don't feel God, like now, we going around putting ourselves, our images before God, our idolatry things, and realizing that God created everything. Why are we trying to make it ours? Why are we
Okay,
trying?
so this is the way I would picture it, and this may support your argument, okay? He did not have a true transformation of God in his life.
Of course not.
And that's
But
what I
he,
would say.
but the thing is, even though he didn't realize that God was using him, he thought that he was probably doing all those things on his own, taking over Israelites. But no, God said, I'm going to use you. And when I'm done using you, I'm going to put you back in your place, just so you know that you ain't got it all. But Nebuchadnezzar couldn't see that, I don't think. I'm thinking he felt it was his own. But God said, no, stop, go, stop. Just like the Israelites were doing what they were doing. They were in a bad place. They was in a good place, all because of disobedience.
Yeah. So this is where we got to stop at. That's this edition of In the Box. I'm Coach Q, and that's Paul Bell. As always, folks, feel free to reach out to us at inthebox317@gmail.com. Again, that's inthebox317@gmail.com. Like us, subscribe to us, and folks, until next time, be blessed.